I should have locked the door. That was my first thought when I heard it creak open behind me. The second was that I should have thrown on some pants before deciding to lie here, sprawled on my bed in nothing but my boxers. But in my defense, I hadn't expected anyone to walk in. Not now. Not him. Dude, what the hell? Logan's voice was sharp with amusement, but I could hear the hesitation beneath it. I scrambled to sit up, yanking my blanket over my lap like that would somehow make this less awkward. Heat flared up my neck, and I forced out a laugh that sounded way too forced. You ever heard of knocking? I shot back, trying for indifference. Logan leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed over his chest, smirking like he'd just caught me in something way worse than just being half naked. His dark eyes flicked over me. Quick, almost unnoticeable, but enough to send a shiver down my spine. You ever heard of wearing clothes in a shared dorm? Okay, fair point, but also, he wasn't supposed to be here. I glanced at the clock on my desk. Logan was supposed to be at practice for another hour, which was why I'd taken the chance to relax, stretched out under the cool air of the ceiling. Fan, trying not to think about how complicated things had been between us lately. He was my best friend. Has been since freshman year. The guy I spent late nights with, talking about dumb things that didn't matter. The one who made me laugh, until my stomach ached. The one I should not have been thinking about the way I had been lately. I'd been careful not to stare too long when he walked around our dorm shirtless, careful not to let my thoughts wander into dangerous territory when he'd crash onto my bed, claiming my mattress was way more comfortable than his. But lately, I'd been slipping, like last night, when he fell asleep watching a movie next to me, his head so close that I could feel his breath against my shoulder. Or that time last week when he'd ruffled my hair and called me pretty boy as a joke. And I'd spent the rest of the night overanalyzing it. Now, as he stood in our doorway, I felt caught. Not because of how he'd found me, but because of the way my heart stuttered at the sight of him. Logan tilted his head, his smirk fading just a little. You okay? I swallowed hard. Yeah, just wasn't expecting company. He didn't leave. Instead, he took a step inside, closing the door behind him with a quiet click. And just like that, the air shifted. I should have locked the door. But maybe, just maybe, I didn't want to. Logan didn't sit on his bed. He sat on mine. It wasn't unusual. He did it all the time, sprawling out like he owned the place, claiming my mattress was so much better than his. But tonight, with me still in nothing but my boxers, it felt different. My heart was already beating too fast, and the fact that he was so casual about this, leaning back against my headboard like we did this every night, only made it worse. I cut practice early, he said, like that explained why he was here. Coach was being an ass, I swallowed, trying to play it cool. That's new. Logan smirked, stretching his arms over his head. His shirt lifted slightly, exposing a sliver of toned stomach, and I looked away fast. Not today. Not now. Anyway, he continued, letting his arms drop. Thought I'd come back and find you doing something interesting. But nope, just lying around in your underwear like a total degenerate. I grabbed my pillow and chucked it at him. Shut up. He caught it easily, laughing. But something about his expression softened. Seriously, though, you've been kinda off lately. I tensed. Off how? Logan shrugged. I don't know. You've been spacing out a lot. And last night you got all weird when I... He paused, then shook his head. Never mind. I knew exactly what he was talking about. Last night, when he fell asleep beside me, his head barely an inch from mine, I hadn't been able to sleep after that. Too aware of the warmth of his body, the way his breath had evened out. How easy it would have been to close that tiny space between us. I'd stayed frozen, terrified that if I moved, I'd give myself away. But now he was looking at me like he already knew. I'm fine, I said, a little too quickly. Logan studied me for a moment, then, because he was Logan, he grinned. Maybe you're just mad because I haven't been around as much. I rolled my eyes. Oh yeah, totally devastated. But he wasn't wrong. Lately, he'd been busier. More time at practice, more nights out with other people. And I hated how much I noticed. How much I missed him when he wasn't here. He nudged my leg with his foot. You could at least pretend. Make me feel wanted. The teasing was normal, but something in his voice wasn't. I glanced at him, expecting another cocky grin, but he just held my gaze. The air shifted again, and I felt it. This invisible thread between us pulling tighter. I swallowed hard, suddenly hyper-aware of how close he was, how easily I could reach out, and I cleared my throat, forcing a smirk. Want me to write you a love letter? Pour my heart out? Logan snorted. God, no. You'd make it all dramatic. My dearest Logan, life without you is a vast and endless void. I laughed, grateful for the out, for the way he always made things easier. Shut up. But the moment still lingered, hanging between us like an unfinished sentence. And when Logan's laughter faded, his gaze dropped, just for a second, to my lips. I barely had time to process it before he looked away, rubbing the back of his neck. Anyway, you hungry? I was thinking of ordering something. Just like that, the tension broke. I exhaled, nodding. Yeah? Sure. But as he grabbed his phone, scrolling through takeout options like nothing had happened, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had, and neither of us were ready to talk about it yet. The rain started around midnight. At first, it was just a light pattering against the window, easy to ignore. But within minutes, the wind picked up, shaking the glass, and the rain turned into a full-on downpour. A streak of lightning flashed, illuminating the dorm room for a split second before thunder cracked so loud it rattled my chest. Logan glanced up from his phone. Damn, that's insane. I pulled my blanket tighter around my shoulders, staring at the storm outside. Guess you're not heading out after all. His bed was barely slept in most nights. He always had somewhere else to be. Some party. Some late-night hang with the team. I told myself it didn't bother me. But the truth was, I'd gotten used to him being gone. I'd learned to miss him quietly. Now he was here. All night. Logan stretched, completely unfazed. Guess not. Hope you don't mind me crashing here. I almost laughed, like I had a choice. He stood, walking over to his bed like he was actually going to sleep there for once. But just as he grabbed the blankets, another thunderclap boomed through the room, and the power cut out. Everything went black. Shit, Logan muttered. I heard him moving around, bumping into the edge of his desk. With a loud thunk, I bit my lip. Smooth. Shut up. I fumbled for my phone, turning on the flashlight. The glow illuminated the small space between us, his face half-shadowed, eyes flickering in the dim light. The air felt thick, the storm outside trapping us in this tiny bubble of darkness. Well, this sucks, he sighed, dropping onto his bed. The wind howled against the window. I adjusted my blanket, shifting uncomfortably. My bed had always been warmer than his. He always said so. And right now, the air was cold. I saw the exact moment the thought crossed Logan's mind. His eyes flicked toward me, hesitant, like he was weighing something in his head. Then, so casually it almost didn't feel like a big deal, he said, "You mind if I crash with you?" My stomach flipped. It wasn't the first time. He'd done it before, after long nights of gaming or when he was too exhausted to care. But something about it felt different now, more intentional. I forced a laugh. Scared of the dark? Yeah, he deadpanned. Terrified. Now scoot over. I hesitated for half a second before moving, making room as he climbed in beside me. The mattress dipped under his weight, and suddenly, he was right there, inches away. His body was warm, warmer than I expected, and when he pulled the blanket over himself, his arm brushed against mine. I should have shifted away. I didn't. Man, your bed is better, he murmured, voice softer now. Told you. Silence settled between us, heavy and unspoken. The only sounds were the rain, the wind, the distant echo of thunder rolling through the sky, and then, I missed this. My breath caught. I turned my head, finding Logan already looking at me, his expression unreadable. My pulse hammered, in my throat. Missed what? I asked, my voice quieter than before. This, he said simply, gesturing between us. Hanging out. Just us. I didn't know what to say to that. My chest felt too tight, my skin too hot. I wanted to believe he meant more than what he was saying. I wanted to believe that this thing between us, whatever it was, wasn't just in my head. I swallowed. Yeah. Me too. Logan exhaled, turning onto his side to face me fully. He was too close now. I could see the faint freckles on his nose, the way his lips parted slightly like he wanted to say something else but wasn't sure if he should. The air between us was electric, charged, and then he reached out. Not much. Just his fingers, barely brushing against mine under the blanket. A simple touch. But it sent a shiver down my spine. Every nerve in my body suddenly awake. I should have pulled away. I didn't. Instead, I let my fingers curl slightly, just enough for him to feel it. Just enough for him to know I wasn't stopping him. Logan's breath hitched. The thunder rolled outside, shaking the room, but all I could hear was my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Neither of us moved. Neither of us breathed, and I knew, in that moment, that everything between us was about to change. Neither of us moved. The thunder rumbled low outside, like the sky itself was waiting. The rain hammered against the windows, drowning out the sound of my heartbeat thundering in my ears. But I swore Logan could hear it, because he wasn't pulling away. His fingers were still brushing against mine under the blanket, barely there, but enough to make my skin tingle, enough to make my breath hitch, enough to make it impossible to pretend this wasn't happening. I swallowed hard. Logan. Shh, he murmured, like he already knew I was about to overthink it, like he was afraid I'd ruin the moment, before it could become something real. His hand turned, his fingers sliding properly over mine. He didn't squeeze, didn't push, just held. My chest was so tight I could barely breathe. What are you doing? His lips twitched like he was about to joke, like he always did when things got too serious between us, but then his expression shifted. Something raw flickering behind his dark eyes. I don't know, he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. I just don't want to stop. The words hit me square in the ribs. Because I didn't either. I'd spent too long pretending, too long forcing myself to push it down, shove it into the dark corners of my mind where it couldn't hurt me. But now Logan was right here, looking at me like this wasn't some dumb joke, like he'd been feeling it too. I licked my lips, my throat dry. Logan, he moved before I could finish. Just slightly. His hand tightening around mine, his body shifting a fraction closer. Enough that I could feel the heat radiating off him, the way his breath hitched when I didn't pull away. I'm tired of pretending, man, he said, his voice rough around the edges. Aren't you? My stomach flipped. I didn't answer. I couldn't. But I didn't need to. Because the way I looked at him, the way I couldn't stop looking at him, was answer enough. Logan exhaled sharply, like that realization had knocked the air from his lungs. His hand trembled slightly in mine, but he didn't let go. Instead, his gaze flickered downward, toward my lips. And then, so quiet I almost didn't hear it, he asked, "Can I?" A simple question, one that had been hovering between us for months. I should have been scared. I should have overthought it, let my brain talk me out of it. But for the first time in forever, I didn't. I nodded, and Logan kissed me. It wasn't rushed, wasn't desperate. Just a soft, hesitant press of lips, like he was testing the waters, waiting for me to pull away. But I didn't. I couldn't. The second I felt him, the warmth, the gentle pressure, the way his breath caught against my skin, I was done for. I kissed him back. Slowly at first, like I still couldn't believe this was happening. Like I was terrified I'd wake up and realize this was just another dream I'd have to shove deep down. But Logan made a soft sound, almost a sigh, almost relief, and suddenly the hesitation melted away. His hand slid up my arm, fingers curling, around my wrist, anchoring me to him. I shifted closer without thinking, our legs tangling beneath the blanket. The heat of his body seeped into mine, and the storm outside faded into nothing. It was just him. Just this. When we finally broke apart, Logan didn't pull away. His forehead rested against mine, our breaths mingling in the dark. "Shit," he murmured, a small laugh in his voice. "That was... yeah." I swallowed, my fingers still gripping his shirt like I was afraid he'd disappear if I let go. It was a beat of silence. Then, "So, what now?" The question made my stomach twist. Not because I didn't know what I wanted, but because I did. I wanted him. I wanted all of it. The late-night talks, the stupid inside jokes, the way he looked at me like I was the only person in the world who mattered. I wanted to stop pretending. This wasn't real. I took a shaky breath. "We figure it out." Logan studied me for a moment, his fingers still tracing small circles against my wrist. Then he smiled, soft, real, and squeezed my hand. "Okay. Just one word. Simple. Certain, like there was never any other option, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't scared." The silence that followed our kiss was the most comfortable thing I'd ever experienced. Logan's hand never left mine. Instead, he kept it there, like it was the only thing keeping him grounded, the only thing he trusted to keep him from floating off into some dizzying, unreal place. He was close, too close, but it didn't feel like enough. I wanted more. I wanted all of him. Wanted the truth of him, the feeling of this moment stretching out into something real. I let out a slow breath, trying to steady my racing heart. I was still processing, still trying to convince myself that this wasn't some ridiculous dream. Logan kissed me. Logan wants me. When I opened my eyes, he was staring at me, his gaze soft but intense, as if he was waiting for me to say something. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice low and almost vulnerable. "Yeah," I whispered, my thumb tracing the back of his hand absent-mindedly. "Are you?" Logan let out a small laugh, leaning his forehead against mine again. "I think so. I mean, if I'm not, this is going to be really awkward." I chuckled at that, relieved by his usual humor. But even now, with the tension broken, something was different. We were no longer just us, the friends who joked and hung out without any expectation beyond comfort. Now there was something else. Something more honest. I trailed off, unsure of how to finish the thought. "I never thought you'd feel this way." His expression softened, and he raised a hand to tuck a stray piece of hair behind my ear, something he'd done 1,000 times before. But now it felt heavier, charged. I didn't either. I didn't want to mess this up. I blinked, feeling the weight of his words sink in. You didn't mess anything up." He grinned, that familiar cocky grin that made him Logan, but this time it felt warmer, softer. "Good, because I'm not great with messes." "Yeah, I've noticed." We both laughed again, the sound easy and unguarded, but my chest was still tight with all the things we hadn't yet said. The things I didn't know how to say. Logan propped himself up on one elbow, still looking at me with that quiet intensity. "You know, I've been thinking about this for a while. Like, about you. About us." I froze for a moment, my heart skipping in my chest. I hadn't expected that. Hadn't expected him to bring up all the things we hadn't said aloud yet. "Really?" "Yeah." He nodded, his expression serious now. And I kept pretending it wasn't there, kept telling myself it was just some dumb crush or whatever, that it'd fade. But it didn't. It just got worse. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "Worse?" Logan chuckled softly, but there was a tenderness in his eyes. "Worse in the best way. I think I was just scared. Scared it would ruin everything we've had. But then I realized." He hesitated, his hand slipping into mine again. "I didn't want to lose you. Not like that. Not without knowing what this is, what we could be." I felt something deep inside me shift. Something that had been stuck for so long finally easing into place. It was a mixture of relief and hope. of realizing that I wasn't the only one who had been holding back, who had been too afraid to take that first step. I squeezed his hand, bringing it up to my chest. "I don't want to lose you either, Logan. Not like that." He smiled, and it was the kind of smile that made everything feel right again. Like we'd been on this path all along, just waiting for the right moment to cross the line. "Glad we're on the same page," he said softly, his thumb brushing over the back of my hand. I could hardly believe it. The words felt like they were sinking into me, embedding themselves into my very core. This wasn't just a random moment. It wasn't just a spur-of-the-moment thing. It was real. This was real. "Me too," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. Logan leaned in again, his lips brushing softly against mine, the kiss lingering, in a way that felt like a promise. His touch was gentle, and there was no rush, no desperation, just a simple connection that felt more intimate than anything we'd ever shared before. When he pulled away, I found myself wanting more. I wanted to keep feeling him, keep exploring this new, terrifying, beautiful thing that was between us. But Logan didn't pull away completely. He just rested his forehead against mine again. Both of us silent for a moment as we let the weight of everything settle around us. "I guess this is really happening now, huh?" I said, breaking the silence with a nervous chuckle. Logan laughed, a soft sound that seemed to melt all the lingering tension in the room. "Yeah, I guess it is." And for the first time in as long as I could remember, everything felt right. There was no confusion, no uncertainty, just the two of us, lying here in the dark, knowing that whatever came next, we were in this together. We didn't need to say anything else. We just needed to let the moment unfold. The storm outside had quieted by the time we sat up, our legs still tangled beneath the blanket, our hands still linked as though we couldn't bear to let go. The room felt different now. Softer, warmer. The kind of warmth that wasn't just from the heat of the room, but from something deeper. A shift, a change in the air that settled between us, weaving us closer together without either of us saying a word. Logan shifted slightly, his thumb still tracing the back of my hand, his gaze fixed on me with that quiet intensity that had been there since the very beginning. It was a look I had never really understood before tonight, but now it felt like something I could read, something I could feel, like there was no more pretending. "So," Logan finally said, his voice low and almost teasing, "what happens now?" I shrugged, though I could feel the nervous flutter in my chest. "I don't know. We figure it out, right?" I smiled, though there was an ache behind it, like we always do. His eyes softened. "Yeah, I think that's the best plan." We sat there in silence for a long moment, not uncomfortable, just comfortable. We were so used to being around each other, to sharing everything without question. But this was different now. The unspoken barriers were down, the walls crumbling, and all that was left was us. Just us. "So, no more avoiding this?" I asked, half joking, half wondering if he'd still pull back. Logan chuckled softly, squeezing my hand. "You think I could avoid you now? After that?" He raised an eyebrow playfully, but his voice softened when he continued. "No, I don't want to avoid this anymore. I don't want to mess it up, you know?" I nodded, my heart swelling at his words. The vulnerability in his eyes mirrored exactly how I felt. This wasn't just some fleeting moment, not some drunk mistake. This was real, and it was terrifying in the best way possible. "I don't want to mess it up either," I whispered, the truth of it sinking deep into me. "But I'm ready for this. I'm ready for us." Logan smiled, the edges of his mouth curling into that grin I had always loved. "Good. Because I think we've been ready for a while. We just didn't know it." I couldn't help but laugh softly, my chest tightening as I realized just how true that was. How much we had been circling each other, unaware, waiting for the other to make the first move. Now that we had, there was no turning back. But somehow, that felt more freeing than anything else. He tilted his head, looking at me thoughtfully, his fingers brushing the edge of my wrist. "You think we can make this work? I mean, we're not exactly like the perfect couple, right?" I raised an eyebrow. "Since when have we ever been perfect?" He laughed, his eyes lighting up. "Fair point, but still, it's not going to be easy, is it?" "No," I said, my voice quieter, more serious. "But I don't care, as long as we're figuring it out together." For a moment, Logan just looked at me, like he was trying to see something in my eyes that would give him more certainty. But I didn't need to say anything else. I felt it. He felt it. "I'm in," he said finally, his voice steady. "All in, no backing out." My heart skipped a beat at his words, the promise in them ringing loud and clear. This wasn't just a moment of passion. This was something real, something that could grow, could change. I was done pretending. I wanted him, all of him, and I was ready to build something together. "I'm in too," I said, squeezing his hand tightly, my voice firm with certainty. "I don't know what's ahead, but I want to face it with you. We'll figure it out." Logan grinned, that familiar mischievous glint back in his eyes. "Guess I'll hold you to that." "You better," I replied with a laugh, feeling the joy bubble up inside me. He leaned in again, capturing my lips in a kiss that was soft but full of promise. This wasn't the kiss of someone unsure, but the kiss of someone who knew exactly what they wanted and wasn't afraid to go after it. When we pulled away, Logan's eyes were warm and full of something I couldn't quite name, but it felt like home. "So, we're official now?" I smiled, my fingers tracing the curve of his jaw. "I think so." And it felt right. Like we had always been meant to be here, in this moment, together. No more pretending, no more hiding. The future was still a mystery, full of unknowns and questions. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't scared. Because I had Logan by my side. And that was all I needed. "Good," Logan said softly, his hand finding mine again, our fingers lacing together. "Because I'm not going anywhere. Neither was I. And that was just the beginning."